Hello, hi. Welcome back to Ep.4 of Naki's Nook, my little corner of the internet where I get to talk about anything and everything. I'm Naki, if you haven't figured out by now. And yeah, today's episode is going to be about an anime review. It's going to be a review for Gundam Requiem for Vengeance. I've recorded this multiple times by now, so it's not going to be as random and off the top of my head as it would have been, but I was having a lot of trouble trying to come up with a rubric to grade and review anime on because, well, I although I've watched a whole lot of anime, reviewing anime is different. It's very easy just to recommend something as, oh, I liked it, you should like it as well, but to be able to explain that is a little bit hard. And I think I've done a decent job of breaking down different segments that I'd like to talk about. Right now I have broken it down into 5 different parts, being the overall enjoyment and impact the show had. This is more personal, and it covers things such as how did it make me feel emotionally, was it memorable, how immersed was I, how easy was it to watch, and would I recommend it, right, based off of those things. And then we have the other 4 being story, characters, visuals, and audio. Story, kind of self-explanatory, I feel like, being how original it is. Does the plot make sense? Is it consistent? How is the pacing? Was the theme impactful? Did it fit well with the setting and the world building, and so on and so forth, right? Then we have characters. I thought about this for a long time. Why are the characters not included in the story? And I feel like the characters, you can have a really good story and have poorly written characters. I think, at least, and maybe vice versa as well. You can have a really horrible story and have some really unique characters, with their design, how distinct they are personality wise, and if they're memorable, and so on. What kind of history that they have, and do they evolve over the course of the show, right? So I felt like that needed its own category. The last 2 being visuals and audio. These are more just how did it look? Was the animation decently done? Was it PNGs put in a PowerPoint slide, or was it very detailed and fluid, right? Was the visual like the theme, I guess, because different animes have different stylistic choices, right? So did that really fit into the story as well? Same thing with the audio. Were there good voice actors picked? Was the voice acting done in a good way? Audio also could be the OST, the opening and ending soundtracks, what music they picked out for that, and just general sound effects such as explosions. Everyone likes a good explosion, so those are kind of what I've narrowed it down to. And yeah, so let me actually start reviewing this, because that's what you're here for, right? Or you're here to whatever. Anyways, Gundam Requiem for Vengeance. I've wanted to review this for a long time now. And And that's because it's different from other anime. And you're probably wondering, why is it different? How is it different? Is it not just another Gundam show? What is Gundam? Let's dial it back. Let's start from the beginning. If you don't know what Gundam is a very long running series of anime. You've probably seen giant robots fighting and thought, mecha and whatnot. It is the mecha show or anime. It's been around for years, decades even, from the very beginning, and it boils down to a show about war. It's based off of it. Well, it takes inspiration from like the World Wars and the Zeons, the quote unquote bad guys that are portrayed in the Gundam universe are usually kind of you can kind of get a little bit of a like Nazi Germany type of vibe from them, and Axis powers and whatnot. So that should kind of help paint the picture of what kind of war is usually going on. It's always trying to take back areas on Earth, or fighting for security of other space planets, spacenoid planets, different space colonies. There's a couple different timelines in Gundam that I won't get into, but the general plot line is far into the future, we humans decide to leave Earth for various different reasons, and you get this different dynamic where people on other planets or the space colonies have beef with the people on Earth for corporate reasons, political reasons, that they don't get treated the same way as Earthlings or the other way around, and that leads to war, to eradicating the other side. Even if there's no longer these stereotypical countries, there's now this, it's space versus Earth, or Mars versus Earth, or whatever the plot line is for that universe or timeline. Gundam Requiem for Vengeance is different. All these previous Gundam shows have been talking about what it's like being the good guy, what it's like being in the Gundam, the good guy mech robot, right? Piloting that and fighting against the Zeons, or the bad guys, the guys in red, literally. So this flips the script, and it's like, here, let's put you in the shoes of a Zeon pilot that's fighting on Earth, right? The Zeons are the space colonies, and they're on Earth to capture bases and whatever else, right? That's not really that important, but it's putting the viewer in the shoes of the bad guy. And it's different. But don't get me wrong, it's still very much a Gundam show. It's definitely, war is bad, there are no winners in war, right? That's kind of the moral of the story, and that's what it's always been. And in this one, there are some different characters that have their own different opinions of war. You have so many different characters that are, hey, I am just fighting in this war for money. I need to, for example, the main character, Ilia Solari, is the captain of the Red Wolves, the Zeon soldiers, right? And her whole thing is, she was this incredible violinist before the war started, and now she's the captain of these like infamously known red wolves that have fought countless battles, and came out on top, right? And her whole thing is that she's a mother. She wants to go back to her kid, who's, quite young and whatnot. And there are other characters that are just like, there's this medical like doctor, or like medic, right? And his whole thing is, I'll save anyone on the battlefield, regardless if they're Xeon or whatever, right? Like he doesn't care if they're feds, if they're from the Federation, which is like the Earth Federation, right? Or if they're Xeon, which are his own people. So to him, it doesn't matter. And then you have other characters that are like, well, if you let the feds go, they're going to come back in Gundam suits or, whatever, and kill us. And that's what it is, right? Do you give up your humanity and kill this other person who has no means of fighting back? Or do you let them go and suffer the potential like drawback that they can come back in tanks and whatever and kill you, right? So it's a balancing act throughout the entire show of, debating the morality of war on the battlefield. And there are plenty of different characters that have their own take on it. But I think that's kind of where this series, Gundam for Requiem for Vengeance, kind of falls flat. And not that it's bad in that sense. I feel like it was more the characters themselves and how they delivered those lines of dialogue made it feel a little bit flat. You're probably wondering, what does that mean? What does that mean? A little more backstory. So, this show is not conventionally animated like any other anime, especially not like previous Gundam entries. It's completely made in Unreal Engine 5, which, if you don't know, is a game engine that a lot of different game studios use nowadays. The most popular one, Fortnite. Fortnite is made by Epic. Epic owns Unreal Engine, and there are plenty of other games that don't really have the same theme or visual theme as Fortnite, because Unreal Engine is just an engine, right? But anyways, the things you can do with Unreal Engine 5 now are insane. You can get hyper realistic, environments and characters and like players in there, right? Anyways, at the end of the day, it's this 3D environment that you can record things in, right? Game or no game aside, now you got other studios that are using it for movies and TV shows. For example, if you don't know, Mandalorian used it for some of their backgrounds, I believe. And, they had this giant projector in the back, and they would just have this 3D environment projected out on the back, and they would record the real actors in front of that. And that's kind of like this weird usage of it, but you don't have to be out in these real places or have a real set when you can do that. So yeah, Unreal Engine 5, it's crazy. And this is me yapping about Unreal Engine 5 because I think it's really cool and interesting. But going back to how it's used in Gundam, everything, there is not a single use of like normal 2D animation in this series. The characters seem to be mocapped down to their facial expressions. Every vehicle is 3D modeled. Every bullet, every explosion is visual effects, right? And it's all going out into this 3D environment that they've built, which looks really realistic. But then the only thing that doesn't really tick off that last box of realism is the people. It's the characters. The characters are mo-capped, and they all have, they're not, the facial features do not really express a whole lot of emotion. Don't get me wrong, it looks like a video game cutscene. Video game cutscenes are good, but very rarely do you see nowadays. Well, nowadays they're getting better and better, but I mean, it's on par with the video game from the past few years, where the characters look really good, but they don't pass off as being realistic. And that kind of breaks the immersion a little bit, for me at least, where they'll be saying something really deep and meaningful, and their facial features do not really show that emotion. Their eyes do not really show that emotion. Their face does not scrunch up, that kind of thing. Now, you might be saying, well, that doesn't happen in normal anime anyways. You get very little facial expression, even though it's done in various other ways. You get those, what is it called? The blush effect, right? Tears, whatever. Those are all very easy things to animate. And you can kind of get a sense of emotion that way. But when you have everything else be really realistic, like hyper realistic, right? Down to like dirt and like the folds on their clothes, the threads on their clothes, right? When their face looks all plasticky and kind of like not real, it breaks the immersion. It makes you think about that. The other thing that breaks the immersion, the voice acting. Now, this is not, the lip sync is not done for the Japanese dub. So, it's done for the English dub, which is fine. The English dub, however, although it's rare to see, quote unquote, an anime, right? Very loose definition by this point, come out with an English dub as its original dub in this case, it's not really done that well. I feel like the voices do fit the characters, since in English, when you have different characters from different ethnicities, it's very easy to give them an accent to display their origin. In this case, it's kind of story-wise doesn't make much sense, but still, you have these different characters with different accents from different backgrounds, right? You have kind of more of like a Russian accent, some of the characters, and you have characters from African descent that have more of a African like tone in their voice, right? And that's very easy to portray in English, and so the characters' voices do fit them very well. The issue is, I feel like the voice acting itself is not that good. The characters, although they're saying deep and meaningful things, they sound like, at times they sound like they're just reading off scripts, and that is probably what they're doing, but they're not really getting into the character themselves. It's not bad voice acting. It passes off. I'll give it like a pass, right? But comparatively, the Japanese dub, I feel like, is miles ahead. You have these characters when they're talking, it's like they're really that embodiment of that character. Sure, their voices and kind of their accents, I suppose, do not really fit because it's in Japanese. So, you have, again, these African descent characters speaking in Japanese, and it doesn't really fit them that well. Same thing with some of the Russian characters. So in that sense, it doesn't really fit. But the emotion that they're able to put out is so much more better. Anyways, it's better than the English dub counterpart. However, then you get into the issue where the lips don't sync, and then you're back to square one, where it's okay, the voice sounds really good, but the character itself does not really convey that emotion. And so I don't know. There's not really a winner here when it comes to that, and so overall the experience is kind of lackluster when it comes to having these characters really be as expressive as they need to be in this type of show, where characters are dying, characters are losing their comrades. It's war, it's gritty. You know, you have these characters that are cursing because, well, that's what you do, right? You say, fuck the feds, fuck the Zeons, whatever, right? But that's like real. That's how it is. And so the characters don't really come off as expressing that as well as they could be. And then again, you get into the visual dynamics where the teeth don't look right. There's weird like hair fringing. You know, the faces kind of look plasticky or rubbery. And the animations are a little too rigid, even though they're probably mocapped and whatnot. But other than that, then you get into the robots fighting robots. And when I say this is probably the best use of a CG environment, right? Like this is it. When you have incredibly detailed robots, the Xeon, like Zaku's and the GMs and the Gundams fighting each other, and you have sparks coming off, you have guns, you have the laser beams getting properly like animated. It looks amazing. There's dirt flying around, there's explosions. It is amazing. And, you know, the robots don't need to be as fluid as the humans, so it doesn't matter. You know, they're going to move in certain ways, they're going to stumble and whatnot. And that all looks real. That is as about as real as it can get. And so I feel like the use of CG in this case for Gundam, that's good. That is great. Like, there have been countless Gundam fights animated and they all look great, but this just adds another layer where you can see like dirt and dust. Sure, that doesn't really happen in space, but still, you have sparks flying off. You have like bullet holes that get animated instantly, right? Because, well, they hit, right? So it's like, it's all real. It feels as real as it can get. And that's great, right? But what else? What else is there to talk about? Well, that's a good question. No, but I think one other thing that I felt like was a little lackluster was the explanation and the setting and the world building. And I know the reason for this is because this is kind of targeted at people that know about Gundam. Maybe a little, maybe a lot, but they're familiar with some of the terms and history behind Gundam. So it doesn't really feel right to have these long expositions or lore dumps. And so some of the characters do explain some of the terms, and they do it in a very well set. They do it very well to not really feel out of place. You have characters such as like Solari and what is that commander's name? The mechanic. I'm forgetting. Okay, but anyways, they talk about like new types, and new types are kind of this. Basically, they're humans that went to space, and then now because they're in space, they get special powers, like psychic powers that allow them to further understand the humans around them, and they get special powers. Basically, new types are kind of just like evolved human beings, whatever. But they kind of explain that very briefly, and that's kind of kind of a good plot point in the series, but if you just heard new type, or if you were able to realize why she has these like psychic powers, then that's probably because you don't have any knowledge of, or very little knowledge of Gundam, and that's fine. But I wish they really explained it a little bit better, or went into more detail about the war, or how it started or whatnot. Because I feel like this could be a really good stepping stone, or like an intro for someone who's trying to get into Gundam. But I feel like that wasn't their real like audience. That wasn't who they were targeting. And on the other hand, I feel like it's a little lackluster for people who are really invested in Gundam, that are used to seeing this POV of the good guys. I feel like it's lackluster, but it is certainly unique. But I do feel like it kind of could have done better explaining a couple things, or maybe getting into the nitty-gritty details of the war, or the different weapons that some of the Gundams have. They like gloss over it. They gloss over a lot of things, I feel like, and they all kind of do add up towards the end, and you do have this very hazy picture of what's going on. And if I was watching this for the first time, I would definitely be more interested in getting to know what some of these characters are like, or want to see more of this. But as a standalone series, it doesn't really feel that good. It's only a 6-episode series, about 45 to an hour long episodes. So it's pretty long. It's about 6 hours total, right? But more than an anime series, 12-episode series. But it doesn't really feel like it was enough, in my eyes at least. That might be more than enough for somebody, but it feels like what they covered wasn't enough. What else? I mean, other than that, the setting and the details were pretty on point. You have very detailed and intricate like Zaku tanks and Zaku suits. You have the goofs that are modeled really well as well. The 78 that they have, RX-78 Gundam, that is the bad guy, the white demon in the show. Very intricately modeled, and I will say this is definitely a compliment. They did an amazing job at showing emotion of the Gundam without tying it to a character. So, without spoiling anything, the Gundam, all you see is this white demon that's killing things, right? Killing the enemy Zaku, right? He's just a ruthless killer. And so to be able to express that emotion through the face of a robot is really hard. You run into that problem of how do you show emotion through a helmet or a suit, right? And they did a really good job with having these LEDs in the eyes and having them turn off when he goes like to show a little bit more emotion, kind of like if he's squinting or getting ready to fight, or opening his eyes, if you will. And so that's really interesting, and it just like it also contributes, that lack of emotion contributes to on the other hand, to how ruthless this Gundam is, because it's not as humanized, right? It's just a thing, it's just a killer, and that's really good. It was really, really good to see that side of Gundam, because You're always subjected to, oh, the Gundam is a good guy. It's fighting for, saving people. It's fighting to end the war. And that's also kind of what it's doing here too. But it's still part of the war. It's still not really a good guy. It's still hurting people. It's still cutting off relationships and lives, right? That is not a fact that you can overlook. And that's why it's great. That's why it is great. It's just a side that we really haven't seen before in Gundam. And that is something that Gundam Requiem for Vengeance does really well. Really, really well. You feel bad for the bad guys, right? You're like, wow, they lost a lot of people. They're just fighting for their freedom, their side, right? Whatever their intentions may be, but they're still doing it for their sake, right? And it's just like, that's something that we don't really see. We always see the Zeon as, oh, they're literally bad terrorists that blow up like bases and whatnot, and that's it. And to a certain degree, that's what they're doing here as well. But again, it all just wraps back around to war. There are no winners in war. You always lose something or someone in the process. I don't know. Towards the end, you get a little bit more of that feeling of, oh, the Gundams aren't the bad guys either. The Zeons aren't bad guys. But it doesn't feel like it wrapped up well. And, you're probably wondering, what does that mean? It didn't wrap up well? It's hard to say without spoilers, but I do feel like even though this isn't really it isn't really a spoiler, but it's not a cliffhanger, but it didn't really feel like there was going to be a second season. It didn't feel like it was going to have a second season, but the ending felt a little, again, lackluster. It didn't feel like it wrapped up nicely. It left you feeling empty. It didn't really make you question anything. It didn't make you... You know what? That's kind of how you should be feeling, actually. It should be making you just feel empty inside. And actually, I think that's a good thing. I'm going to take that back. Even though it felt lackluster in the sense that it didn't wrap up nicely in a neat little bow and solve everything, and even though it didn't really make you question anything, I feel like that emptiness is actually a good thing, because that's how you would feel after war, after learning the things that you did learn throughout that series, and learning the different sides to that war. So, you know what? I think it's actually a good thing. I think it's actually a good thing. What else haven't I talked about? Oh, audio. Again, I don't really need to talk about the voice acting anymore. The Japanese dub was really good. The lip sync didn't match, and the ethnicities of the characters did not match up. But the English dub, on the other hand, even though it's decent and the characters fit the voices, their passion and realism doesn't really compare to the Japanese dub. So pick your poison, I suppose. It is what it is, though. There's a little bit of an opening song. I'm not too sure what the song is from, but there's like this orchestral, like classical music that plays, an ode to Solari being a violinist, concert hall type stuff. But it's fitting. It's definitely fitting. Um, and even though there's not really an ending song or anything like that, the intro does fit, I suppose. Not really, not really a song. It's more of just a melody. Not really lyrics to that. But um, what else in terms of audio? The sound effects are great. It's very easy nowadays to, I feel like there's such a repertoire of different sound effects that you can use for explosions, guns firing, bullet sounds, and just other leaves crunching, stuff like that, tanks rolling off in the distance, vehicles, engines. So like in terms of that, it was good, everything fit, so there wasn't really an issue there. But also, I think for me at least, the audio is only bad when it's bad. Or rather, I can't tell when it's really good because I only notice when it's bad, right? Maybe that makes sense, maybe that doesn't make much sense, but it's not really something that you should have to think about. There's been other animes that I've watched where I'm like, oh, whoa, they did not balance this properly. I can only hear in my right ear. Or, whoa, they sound really quiet here and really loud when the music comes on and stuff like that. So you only really notice when it's bad or unfitting, or if the sound effect is really goofy and doesn't fit. So I would say everything fits, everything's passing. So good on them for doing that, and the audio balance is really nice. And this is probably the part where I would talk about like the animation quality and the visuals and like the animation theme, but there really isn't any of that. There's not really like a theme because it's like hyper realistic in a sense, but it's not really animated, right? So it's kind of hard to judge it on that. It's just CG anime, but like good, the good kind. Kind of feels like we're watching a video game cutscene. Very similar to the long cutscenes that Hideo Kojima had in like Death Stranding, for example. Kind of feels like that to a certain degree. So if you know what I'm talking about, then imagine that, but Gundam. Don't get me wrong, those are good cutscenes, but that's the closest thing I could like compare it to. There's some really good depth of field usage because you're able to do that in that 3D environment. You have really good fog and smoke effects. Dirty like suits. They get dirt on their clothes, their faces. Just this really dingy sense of like scenery, and it's fitting for war. So the atmosphere is like really well done, and the environment detail is also really well done. There are a couple scenes, I won't lie, that they have on the mobile suits. Even though the mobile suits are like modeled really well, they have like these emblems on the mobile suits, the Zaku's and whatnot. Different like logos for the different companies, and what side they're on, who they're working for, and whatever, and different like shield emblems. And like even in the first episode, you see like some of these are like really badly pixelated, and maybe it's just an overlooked like scan or something. But then like later on when they zoom in, it's like really detailed. So I don't know, maybe it's just like a rendering thing, but just things like those, like you don't really notice immediately, but sometimes if you're really looking, then it's something that you might notice. Overall, it doesn't really detract from the experience. It doesn't it's not really a bad thing, but I feel like if those things kind of got polished, and again with the faces and the characters, if they got a little bit more polished, this would be like visuals alone, this would definitely be like a 10 out of 10. Everything's like real. The scans are amazing, right? The trees look like real trees, like that alone is amazing. And you know, the story can be whatever, but just being able to also have a really solid animation and visual is definitely carrying it. Yeah, to wrap it up, I feel like I'd probably give this a 7 or maybe even an 8 out of 10. It wasn't bad in any sense. There weren't any like, oh, you should not watch this just because it looks horrible or it sounds horrible or anything like that. There weren't any of that, like those detractors, if you will. But I think if you're going into this expecting a traditional Gundam anime show, you're looking at it completely wrong. It's not animated. It's very much a Gundam show, but it is not said or told from the point of view that you would expect it to be told from. So if you're looking for something new, if you're looking to maybe even get into Gundam, I would say this is a really good maybe starting point. Maybe you're new to like anime, but you've watched or play video games or kind of like that 3D animation. Maybe you like that, and it's a little bit more realistic than anime. So maybe you'll find it more pleasing to look at. But I would say just give it a chance. It's a weekend watch, you know, kind of 6 hours, 3 hours each day kind of thing. Just have it on the background. Although that's not what I would recommend. But considering it's on Netflix and it's only 6 episodes, I'm guessing that's what people are going to be doing. This came out I think it came out like October 28th or something like that. It's been out for a month at least. But, you know, hey, if you like Gundam, then you're definitely going to enjoy how detailed the suits look. And it's something that we just haven't seen in older, especially the older series. But some of the newer ones do use 3D animation to animate the fights, but still, this is a whole new level of detail that we haven't seen, and it's just amazing. I genuinely like the battle scars alone that you see on these suits makes up for anything else. If you want to watch big giant robots fight wars, battles, and just see absolute carnage, this is it. This is like as best as we can get for Gundam fans. Now, story-wise, it was just as good as any other Gundam story. If you really watch it, there are some really emotional moments where you feel bad for a lot of the characters. The ones that do die, the ones that continue living, you do kind of feel attached to them in a certain sense. I will say it's not as good as some of the other Gundam shows, but it does an okay job. I rewatched it before reviewing it right now, and the characters, although at first glance do seem a little bit bland, they are all unique and do have their own reasons. Sure, their history isn't really explained too well other than the few main characters, but they all have different takes on war, and I find that really interesting. It's not something that's really been talked a lot about in other Gundam shows. It's always just the main character piloting the Gundam, and then you have some other side characters, some captains that are telling him what to do or being his friend or whatever, right? And, you know, I think it's a good thing that we see this other side. I would love to see more and more side stories from the Gundam universe. The Gundam universe has so many different types of frames, and mobile suits, right? So many different types of giant robots. Not some of them aren't even giant robots, but I would love to see, different uses of these technologies that we've seen in other settings. It doesn't always have to be about piloting a giant robot to fight for whatever. Even though that's what Gundam is, I feel like I would love to see more of these side stories. But we'll see where it goes. Again, I'm a huge nerd for games, and so seeing Unreal Engine be used in this from start to finish basically is insane. Like, what other possibilities are there, right? Like, I can't wait to see what else comes out of animation, what other animes pick this up. We've seen so many different animes use CG very poorly animated characters, monsters. You have bad textures in some of these, and it would be great to see them use more good CGI or good computer generated like action, not just for the background characters, or not background characters, well, sometimes background characters, but more of the background environment. It would be amazing to see some more 3D, like genuine 3D animation. And that wraps it up, folks. Hope you enjoyed my kind of rushed but not too in-depth, too spoilery review of Gundam Requiem for Vengeance. It's out on Netflix. Give it a shot. It's in English, if that's another barrier for entry. This is something I would wholeheartedly recommend for people who love Gundam, for people who, like me, are kind of interested in Gundam, have some knowledge about Gundam, or if they're just new to anime in general. It's something real, it's something captivating. It's not like traditional anime, so it might help you get your foot in the door if maybe 2D animation's not your style, or maybe you're just interested in watching fighting robots, right? I know that's what got me into Gundam. So with that, I hope you guys have a good day, and again, be sure to support me if you will. Naki's Nook on Insta, and join my Discord so we can have a chat. I'll probably do more and more better constructed and more detailed anime reviews hopefully in the future. This was my first one, and I know I have a lot more to talk about, and it's incredibly hard to do without spoiling anything. I think I spoiled a little bit, but it's not really that important, so hopefully you guys aren't too mad at me. But maybe I'll do a spoiler review in the future, because that might be easier. With that, goodbye guys. You guys have a nice day.